Hey, Mark, thank you so much for spending our time with us tonight. What I really want to do is jump in straight to what's the Corsair like? You get to fly the Mustang and you get to fly the Corsair. So as the airplanes are sitting there on the ramp and they're sitting there gleaming in the sun, and you're getting ready to go fly an acro routine in an air show. You're walking up to the Corsair, you're walking up to your Mustang. What are you thinking? What's going through your head?
I think probably what everybody else is thinking, if they're doing it, how lucky they're to get to do it in the first place. Just to see either one of those machines, they're so iconic and so much history and so much performance that, it's no matter which one it is, it makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up with excitement, and just the thought of what you're going to get to do with that plane and what it was, built to do and how we get to enjoy it now and demonstrate it is just a little bit of what the plane was actually, both planes were designed to do. And so now we get the opportunity to show it in a more obviously peaceful time, put it through its courses and demonstrate the high performance aircraft they are. The Mustang, it's the looks, both of them have very iconic looks, very unique. I mean, Mustang is slick, looks like it's going 400 miles an hour just sitting on the ramp. The Corsair with the giant prop, the gull wing, it's very identifiable, itself. So they both stand out. They're probably, you don't have to be much of an airplane person, just halfway be an airplane nut. You know what you're looking at. Most everybody knows what a Mustang and a Corsair is these days. And so,
Absolutely.
but yeah, in the Corsair, it's a very commanding aircraft is how I'd probably say it when you walk up to it. It's got that big stout gear, that big propeller, it sits up high and proud. And so it looks a lot bigger compared to the Mustang. Just sitting
So
on the
let me
ground.
ask a question. When you're getting on those two airplanes, I mean, I've been on the Corsair and I've been on the Mustang. The Corsair is unbelievably difficult to get on. For a lot of people out there listening, Mark, why don't you walk through us how you get on the Mustang versus how you get on the Corsair?
Well, the Mustang's definitely more elegant. And it's a lot lower to the ground. Just total different aircraft. It's you step on the tire, climb up on the wing, and cockpit, is below your waist level, so it's easy to throw your leg in there and jump into it. It's almost like jumping into like a Corvette or something. The Corsair, with its real high nose attitude, and the gull wing. I'd say the gull wing is what really makes it a challenge or difficult to get in, because you're kind of going uphill in more ways than one. You're fighting the angle, the deck angle, the aircraft sitting on the ground, and then you're also fighting this angle of the wing where it gull wings up into the fuselage. And so you've got multiple steps getting into. There's different techniques. Everybody's there's probably 2 or 3 common ways to get in and out of it. And ultimately, the goal is to not bust your butt. Obviously, that's and to look cool. You don't want to not look cool. Nobody wants to fall down. But and then of course the round motor.
Cool.
Yeah, and I mean the round motors, they typically, they're a little bit messier. They tend to leave a little bit more oil behind them. And whereas a Mustang, if it's leaving oil behind, it's probably got something wrong with it. So you're fighting the angles of the wing getting on it. And you got the oil slick, that's providing slippery surface for you. So the round motor stuff, of course, here it's like that. It's you get on there with a clean flight suit, and it takes quite a bit to keep that flight suit clean. A Mustang, you probably don't get a drop of anything on you if the plane's doing what it's supposed to be doing and everything's tight like it's supposed to be.
I love it. Sitting there in the hangar, our Corsair, anytime it's around there, it's always dripping just a little bit of oil constantly. So you're right in what you're saying. It's a battle to keep the oil off. All right. So for the people who are listening at home, let's walk through a startup procedure in a Mustang and just real high view. And let's walk through a startup procedure in the Corsair. What are your thoughts as you're flipping that primer and flipping that go button?
Well, in the Mustang's a pretty easy plane to start. The one thing it's notorious for is what we call a stack fire. And so what happens is you introduce too much fuel to it, and you start getting a fire out of the exhaust stacks. And if it starts up right away, it pulls it. Fire goes out and everything's good. A little black smoke, and you're good to go. If you don't get it started right away and you got the stack fire, then it can get interesting. If God forbid the starter died on you or the battery went dead, you could have a little bit more of a problem. You start, at the minimum, start cooking the paint around the cowling and stuff if you keep it going too long. But, if everything goes like it's supposed to, it's pretty easy to get in there. And, we got what we call a booster coil. So when you engage the starter, in theory, the prop should start with the mags off, initially catch. If it's got a weak booster coil, the booster coil's not hooked up, you get the prop blade turning a couple blades, you turn the mags on, and if it's a cold start, you've already introduced anywhere from 6 to 10 seconds of prime. If it's already flown and it's been, within the past couple hours, you just barely bump the primer just to get a little bit of gas in there. Because even after flying an hour or two before, it still can get what you call kind of a hot start and get a stack fire. So you don't want to give it too much gas there. It lights off. You smooth out. You bring both of them up to close to 1,000 RPM, 800 to 1,000 RPM, and just let them warm up. Checking hydraulics. Make sure your flaps come up. Your dump handles in, so your gear doors are retracting. There's just pretty smooth. The Corsair, if it hasn't flown that day, you want to pre-oil it, and that's with most round engines. You pre-oil them if they haven't flown that day, and that just gets oil dispersed all through, and especially get it the master rod, get everything all nice and looped up in there, so you're not putting metal to metal. And so we actually do pre-oil the Mustang too. You don't see the pre-oiler quite as common on the V12s. It's becoming more common, but not as common at this point. Pretty much all round motors have a pre-oil on them. So you pre-oil it. It's first flight of the day. You get in there, and you pulled it through. Typically, you pull the prop through to make sure you don't have a hydro lock. That's where the oil builds up in the bottom cylinders. And basically, when that piston comes through that cylinder, if there's oil in that piston, in that cavity, there's no room for it to keep going, and it'll cause a rod to bend, and that's bad news. So,
it's $100,000 right off the bat if that happens.
And that's if it doesn't put you in a field somewhere, and cause significant damage to the airframe. But so you pull it through. Sometimes on some of the big ones, it's not quite possible. So what you do is you bump the blade, you bump it, and that you keep the ignition off and you bump the prop blade through. 9, 10 blades depending on how many bladed prop it is, and just to make sure the clutch should be set on the starter so that if it does get any sort of resistance, the starter should discontinue moving the prop. And now I'll let you know that you've got maybe a hydro lock. Otherwise, on the SBD, we'll pull it through by hand. The Corsair will do it by hand if we have a couple people to help. It's a lot of compression, as you can imagine. So, but we want to make sure that's clear. That's one of the first things you do. So you clear the prop, pre-oil it, get in there. Now you go get ready to start it. With that, typically make sure the auto cutoff's off, just like you did on any of them. Throttle's about where you want it, just like on any of them. You got a boost pump. Most of them have a boost pump. A lot of them won't start without a boost pump. So get the boost pump on, and you engage the starter, get a couple blades going. You come on the primer, get the mags on, get on the primer, hold it for 3-4 seconds, come off of it, come back on it for maybe a second or two. And everyone's kind of different. They all kind of have their different setups. Some are happier with less prime or more, and there's different techniques too. Some guys will prime when they're bumping blades. Some people do prime once they actually go for the start, which is a dry start. So there's different techniques. I just kind of do the dry start where I don't introduce fuel until I'm ready to actually start the engine. And so the biggest thing on a round motor is you don't want it to backfire. And what happens there is you're giving it too much air, too much throttle's open too much, and so you never want to really jockey the throttle on a round motor engine, whether it's a T6 or a Corsair or a Wildcat or any of these things, Dauntless, any of this stuff.
So Mark, why is that? Why do you not want it to backfire? What does it do?
Well, it's hard on the exhaust stacks for one. You can blow an exhaust stack off. It's just a lot of force and a lot of pressure coming out, and it sounds horrible. It's not looking cool. Remember, y'all want to look cool, so you don't want to. It can be damaging to the engine, and it can backfire. It can blow backwards up in the induction. You can cause damage to the induction system. Just all kinds of things, and so it's just a
Okay.
bad deal. You need a little backfire happens from time to time. It's most likely not going to damage anything, but if it really lets off, is when you probably want to discontinue the start and get out and make sure you didn't do some sort of damage to the aircraft, the engine. And so, a lot of times you kind of know if you've been flying the plane, you kind of know where the throttle is happy at. You may have to move it a little bit to find a happy spot. But when it's catching, you typically don't want to move that throttle if you can keep from it. If you just got to just bump it just ever a little bit, if it just started up and it's getting going, it's just coming to life. Any sudden movement, and it'll start talking to you, and it'll let you know it doesn't like it.
That's awesome. Watching this, I've been a member for the CF now for 20 something years, and watching the Mustang start, watching the Corsair start are two completely different animals. When you start the Mustang, it's a little finicky V12. It sounds like a well-tuned Ferrari, and it just lights off and just sounds unbelievable. When the Corsair starts, it sputters, spats, throws oil everywhere. It's smoking. It sounds like a pissed off Mack truck. It is such a different animal.
It is. It disappears for a second there. If it hasn't flown in a while, the amount of oil, smoke from the oil it's something else. It's a spectacle to see. The Mustang, it likes to go fast. It likes to produce horsepower. So when it's at an idle, it's got a little bit. It sounds kind of rough a little bit. It's got a smooth. It's a V12, which sounds cool, but you can tell there's a little crackle and pop to it, and that's just because it's got the advanced timing, and the timing's advanced, the higher power settings, and so the higher the power setting you come up on, the smoother that engine smooths out, and it just sounds like sounds very, very smooth, very slick. The round motors, of course, the same thing. Down when they're low, when they're idle, they're kind of sputtering, spattering. They don't sound quite as smooth. You probably hear the exhaust a little bit more. But once they get the power to them and stuff, they got the sound of their own. That sounds like none other.
Oh, it sounds, like I said, it sounds like a Mack truck. It's just wanting to go and never stop. All right, so you got the airplane started, you've warmed up, you've taxied out to the end of the runway, you're waiting for the famous words from the air boss, Corsair, the runway's yours, the box is yours, your right hand's on the stick, your left hand's on the throttle, feet are firmly on the rudder pedals. What's going through your head at that point when you hear the air boss go, "Let's go, Mark, let's go make some noise"?
Well, if you're in the Corsair, the first thing make sure the tail wheel's locked. That's something you don't have to do in the Mustang. And you would have already done that. You're sitting there in position, ready to go. You've done your cockpit checks. You've made sure your belts are tight, the canopy's closed, boost pumps on, trims are set. Nothing loose in the cockpit. You're ready to rock and roll. So you hear that, it's go time. And chances are, if that's the scenario you got, you're doing an air start. So you're gonna take off. Do a more or less high performance, max performance climb. Take off, climb. You're gonna get up to altitude as soon as you can, because they're all waiting for you to come in and do your thing. And so you're gonna climb up, get up to, depending on the box, 4,000 or 5,000 feet. Get up there real high, get a lot of smash on the airplane, so you can get a good run in, get a lot of speed, and flatten out before you go into your first maneuver a little bit. And so Mustang climb up, get up there, 4,000 feet. Maybe you're behind the crowd. You take a good look over the box one last time, make sure everything's good. You got your shoulder harnesses tight, and security's good, props where you want it, set the power where you want it. All right, it's go time. You roll in. You're coming down the pipe, getting a lineup. You get a little bit of a lineup. For my initial maneuver is always a loop. I do pretty basic maneuvers, but loop's always my first maneuver. And so I'll come down the line. You kind of get set up. Get a feel for it. If you might be a little cocked, a little yaw for the crosswind. Because you got to correct for that. You don't want to get blown out of the box and get out of the unprotected area. So coming down, typically looking for 300 plus miles an hour, and you can do it slower, but it's hauling. I usually look about 300. Maybe a little bit more. Just depends on the box. If the box is smaller, you may not have the ability to go as fast, meaning you keep it tighter in. If you've got a large crowd, and you really want to demonstrate, you might go bigger numbers, so you got a bigger loop, so it takes up a bigger area so more people can see. You just kind of plan what you got with what you got. So, but we'll say 300, pretty standard. You come in, go right in the G, coming in about 4.5 Gs, tracking up on the up line. You're going to come across the top, probably, 3,500 feet, maybe 4,000 feet over the top. You come over the top, keeping everything straight, keeping the rudder, coordinated, looking at, usually see about 100. I see about 120-ish over the top, I guess, about what I'm usually seeing. And that varies, but about 120, you're doing well. And come over the top. As the nose comes back through, you're just kind of feathering it through, let it kind of come through nice and easy. Get down that down line, let your speed build up before you start putting your G back on it. And, the whole thing is to try to come back down on the show line about the same altitude you started. My card's at 500 feet, so I need to stay at 500 feet or above. So enter at 5, try to feather it out to where when you come out the bottom of it, kind of walk it down to 500 so it looks nice and symmetrical as you can. And it's a rush. From there, like most maneuvers, I come off, reposition for the next maneuver. So you level off for a second, pop off, make your turn depending on where the crowd's at, climb for altitude, get your altitude so you can trade your altitude for airspeed, so you can, wing it back over, come back in and trade that altitude for airspeed, get your speed back up for your next maneuver, wherever that is, whether it's a barrel or a Cuban or a half Cuban, and go from there.
Go have some more fun.
So
one thing I heard you say, in the Mustang, you said the canopy's closed. But when I watch you take off in the Corsair, the canopy's always open. So why do y'all do that?
Well, we always, most planes you take off the canopy open, a lot of them. I mean, these tail draggers, God forbid you have a rejected takeoff or the engine fails on you shortly after takeoff, and you go off the end and it flips upside down. Obviously it's a lot easier to crawl out of the airplane if that canopy's open than if it's shut. And so, the Mustang, every once in a while you see somebody flying with the canopy open on takeoff. It's just, you get so much heat and exhaust coming in. It's so loud.
It's just right in front of you.
Right there in front of you. It's just not, I don't know. It doesn't happen as much. I mean, you see guys do it every once in a while, but it's not really a common thing. The canopy on the Mustang is pretty easy to get rid of if you have to. You got the release handle. They all have release handles, and fortunately, I've never had to find out how well they work or don't work. But the Mustang, from what I understand, is one of the easier ones to get off the airplane if you have to. So, maybe that's part of it. If you're going to end up somewhere you don't want to be, the handle's right there. You can pull it and yank it and at least get it off the track so you could, finagle your way out. But either way, if you get upside down with a canopy shut, it could get ugly.
It's not good for you. So now you've talked about the Mustang doing a loop and your entry speeds and where you expect to be over the top. Walk us through the Corsair. Same thing. Left hand's on the throttle, right hand's on the stick. Both feet are on the rudder pedals. You're ready to go, and that airboss calls you. Mark, it's yours. Let's go. What are your thought process getting that Corsair rolling down the runway and keeping it straight? I mean, 2,200 horsepower is a ton of horsepower out there slinging that prop.
It is. I mean, they both have their tendencies from all the horsepower and the torque and all that. That's everybody knows about that. It's heard the horror stories about it. To be honest with you, it is a lot of power and you can feel it. But the key to it, the magic to it is not getting the tail up too soon. The thing that gets people is getting the tail up too fast and losing that directional control with the tail wheel. That tail wheel is like a rudder in the water. You got more directional control, more control of it. As that prop's fighting you and trying to turn you, that tail wheel's helping to keep your footing. So, guys have different techniques. Some guys get the tail up as soon as they can, or somewhat quick, and they fly down the runway a long way with the tail up, and they come off the ground. I tend to fly the plane off the ground in more of a 3-point altitude. The tail comes up just ever so slightly right before the plane's ready to fly. And everybody's got a different technique. But it's one of those things. You can cheat it. You can use right aileron because it's trying to turn left on you. Use a little right aileron. Obviously, be ready with the right rudder. Hopefully you set your trim right. That does a lot right there. Just have your trim set correctly. That can bite you. It gets your attention if the rudder trim's not put in correctly. But it becomes kind of intuitive. The more you fly them, or the more recently you've flown one, it's not as big a deal. It's like getting in your car. It's just it's coming, and your brain just automatically tells your leg to, hey, go put some boot in it, and keep this thing straight. You throw factors in like crosswinds and stuff like that. And that can add some things to it, especially like the Corsair. It's got that big dihedral on it, so the wingtips are way up in the air, and so you get a good gust of wind under, and it's trying to pick that wing up. And they got real soft struts on them because it's designed to land on a boat, so they could pound them on and take a beating.
Right.
So they get kind of soft on their struts, and they'll kind of bobble a little bit. So a wind can kind of pick you up, and it won't pick the tire up off the ground. It'll pick it up off the strut a little bit, and it can get a little squirrely on you. So that's something that the Corsair will do to you. The Mustang won't. The Mustang, it barely knows what a crosswind is. It's, out of all the airplanes I've flown, the Mustang is probably, if I had to pick a tail dragger to fly in a crosswind, it'd be a Mustang all day long. Because the Mustang, I don't know what it is. It just handles them. It handles them so well. It just slices right through it. It doesn't look like it has the biggest rudder and the biggest vertical on it, but it does an amazing job in crosswinds.
So now walk us through a loop on a Corsair. For the whole thing, your altitude, your entry speeds. Tell me what you're thinking as the loop starts progressing, or walk us through a loop.
So all these are very similar in speeds. The altitude, the speed, everything's pretty similar. Now some will climb better than others. Some will slow down better than others. So the Corsair, we're talking knots. So I'm citing from the book. What I do 280 knots is what I look for. Obviously, you can do more in either one of them, or anything, for the most part, as long as you're not over, exceeding, max speed of it, red line. But 280 is a good number. The book references, 250 knots, and they say, 250 knots is for someone that's got some experience in it, and 250 is fine. The Corsair's got a big wing on it. It really talks to you. It fly. It feels like a small airplane. It's amazing how balanced the ailerons are on it. That was the amazing thing to me, is how light it felt on the controls. It just
that
feels
gigantic
so harmonious.
Airplane feels small.
It really does. It really
That's
does.
awesome.
If you're not paying attention to the 12-footed nose in front of you and the giant wing panels out on your right and left, if you're just going off the feel and you're not, it is amazing how sporty that thing feels. And
that's great. I love that.
It is so light on the controls. The rolls are just so light. It's a pleasure to fly. But as far as the loop goes, like I was saying, 280 entry, you can get down to 250. Again, it just depends what you're going for. Are you going for a smaller box? You going for a bigger box? What's the crowd line like? How do you go into your next maneuver? Are you wanting to reposition before you do your next maneuver, or are you going to go right into another maneuver? So, everybody's got a different way they do things. And so they may want to come out of that loop with a lot more energy on the backside, and so because the more energy you go to on the front side, the more you're going to have on the backside, right? You're going to go higher, which is going to give you more smash coming down the line on the back. So like I said, the way I do it, I do 280. That gives me a ton of smash. I come off the show line, I go out, I reposition, get my altitude, come back around, trade it for airspeed, and then go to my next maneuver. But when you're going through the loop, it's very similar. I feel like the Corsair is a climber. It you pull vertical and it feels like it's really hunting, and you can get that thing pretty slow. With that big wing, you can come over top a lot slower than Mustang if you want, and that's where experience and comfort level comes in. Obviously, you want to keep it flying, you don't want to stall it, but it's got a big efficient wing on it. So
That's neat.
you can come slower top and you can milk it more. The Mustang's a little bit more critical at slow speeds. It's got that laminar flowed wing, so you want to be more respective of it at the lower speeds, and especially if you're loading it up and putting G's on it.
Yeah, I've always heard the Mustang will bite and snap really quickly, and the Corsair is a lot more stable in the air. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the way. Yeah, that's that the Mustang it will talk to you. They both talk to you. It depends how you approach that angle of attack. When you exceed and you go into the stall, it all depends how quick you come into it. If you're easing into it, they're both they talk to you. They let you know. If you're doing quote unquote accelerated stall, you've gotten it slow and you yank on it. They're both going to let go, but that Mustang will let go real quick on you. It's not going to tell you a whole lot. So
I love that. All right, so
you got
acro routines.
It's just
So your acro
yeah.
routine's over
So
now. Done your loops, done your rolls, everything like that. You're coming back into land. I've always heard the Corsair is notoriously hard to land. Why is that, or am I way off base on that?
well, I wouldn't say it's. I don't. It's definitely more challenging. I would say that. I've been
But why
fortunate.
is that?
I've got maybe. Well, I mean, it was designed to land on a boat. So you're always into the wind. Now the Marines did operate. I get that they did use them on land base and all that, but its primary design and what they utilized, mainly used them for was landing on a boat. Boat's always into the wind. You're catching a cable. All you got to do is hit a point on the boat and grab that cable and it's over with. You're not dealing with much crosswind other than just make sure it's lined up on funnel for the flat top. So you go operate the aircraft now on a hard surface on a runway on land, and you don't have the luxury of always having the wind down the pipe. You may have a crosswind, which it seems like more times than not. So it's a little bit more of a challenge in a crosswind, like I was saying, kind of going back to that big dihedral. The wings are really up on the wingtips, so you get a good gust of wind under it. It's already kind of picked up as it is. Now it's really picking it up, and you got the spongy struts that can work against you. You got a lot of flaps on that thing, and what I was taught when I first started flying it was, you land with typically 30, 40, or 50, and a lot of guys said, hey, when you first learn, go fly with 30. Maybe 40, but don't do 50 till you're comfortable with it. And the reason why, 40 is plenty. The thing, if you ever look at a Corsair, the flaps are gigantic. They're like half the wing of a Mustang. And so, but what happens is it blocks out the wind across the rudder. And so as you start to get the nose up, you're blocking out more wind and that rudder will lose effectiveness. And so the more flaps you lose, the more you're taking away the effectiveness of that rudder. So that's another thing you want to be, cognizant of when you're landing in a crosswind. If you're really needing that rudder, you may elect to use a lower flap setting. And like in a lot of airplanes, that's not an uncommon thing in a tail dragger. But, it doesn't have a steerable tail wheel like the Mustang does. And so, again, landing and taking off, having that thing locked is imperative. And in fact, I had a situation, I just flew a plane that was repainted, and I went and did the initial flight on, and there's a locking pin that drops in to lock the tail wheel. Real simple system. Well, unbeknownst to me, a little bit of paint had gotten on that pin, and so the way I could feel, the lever went in position. It felt when I waggled the rudder pedals, it felt like the tail wheel was locked. I took off, no problem. I come back on the land, and somewhere on the rollout, it feels like I have a flat tire on the tail wheel. And unbeknownst to me, the pin had popped out, and the tail wheel was doing 360s as I was rolling out. And like on a shopping cart.
Makes you slightly
and well, I had no idea. If I had known, I'd been scared completely. You know what? And probably would have gone off in the grass, but I didn't know it. And so I just thought, this is taking a lot of rudder to keep this thing on the runway, a lot of back and forth. And once I got it slowed down, it went away, and I didn't think anything of it. And I shut it down, and the people come over to me, were watching, were like, "Oh my gosh, what happened?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" They said, "Your tail wheel was spinning the whole way down the runway." And I'm like, good thing I didn't know, because I would have been pretty nervous. But so, that's one thing, you always want to make sure that tail wheel's locked. But the Corsair, I mean, it's a little bit harder to see out of as that tail comes down. I like to try to do a tail low or a 3-point landing. That way it's kind of done flying. And if you do get off the runway, you're not going that fast, so you hope you don't do much damage. But it's a little bit harder to see. And then you don't have the luxury, you got to make that decision when it's time to get off the runway, when you're slow enough to unlock the tail wheel so you can now exit the runway. And there's been many people, me included, that misjudged that a little bit and unlocked it a little too fast. And it gets your attention real fast when you that tail starts trying to swap on you. You catch it with the brakes, but you go, oh, that was a little too quick. But and then it's as far as taxiing them, the Corsair, you got to use differential braking, and the rudder only does so much for you. So you got to kind of pop. You use the rudder and you pop the brake. You get to the S turn just like you do any tail dragger. And if you got a strong crosswind, it can be a pain in the butt. You're fighting that. You try not to use up the brakes, but there's times you got to use a lot more brake than you want to use. It's just the way it is. Again, these planes are designed to land on boats. So luckily we've got a newer style brake. An older style brake will fade out on you, and you may be in a situation where you just got to bring to a stop and shut it down and let the brakes cool off and tow it in. So it's a lot more. It's not as pleasant getting it to the runway and from the runway. Those are probably two of the bigger challenges that are different between that and like a Mustang. Mustang's got a steerable tail like a T6. It's real easy to just steer it with the rudder pedals. No big deal. If you got to unlock it for a really tight turn, you can unlock the tail wheel, pushing the stick forward. Mustang's easier to look out. It's got that skinny V12, with the canopy open. You kind of bob your head out each side of the canopy behind the windshield, and you really don't need to S-turn too much for it. You really don't. The Corsair, you need to do quite a bit more with that big 2800 out in front with your cow flaps open and all that good stuff.
Well, Mark, I know you're busy. I know you just got done working on a Wildcat where you're going to take to Oshkosh, and you're driving right now. So I really do appreciate your time. And you've been a loyal friend and a great participant in Air Base Georgia and the CAF for years and years and years now. So look forward to seeing you up at Oshkosh, and I can't thank you enough for your time.
Hey, I tell you, Philip, I feel so very fortunate to be a part of Air Base Georgia and everything that I've got to do, and the CF as a whole. I mean, the opportunities have been amazing, more than I've ever imagined. And I tell you, anybody that's never been out to ABG, I recommend you come out, check it out. We got a family out there. We got a heck of a lot of really neat airplanes and neat people, lots of neat stories, and it's something else. But anybody that's listening, come out and see us at Oshkosh. We'll have the Corsair, the Mustang, the Dauntless, the T6, the T34. I don't know about the 63. It might be there. I don't know, though. But come on by and say hi to any one of us that are out there around the aircraft.
Well, Mark, thank you again so much for your time. Steve, back to you, sir.